regulation of water content。各位同學喺呢一課咧，我哋首先咧講一講 water content 嘅 regulation 嘅重要性喺我哋身體裏邊。首先我哋要掌握身體裏邊嘅 water balance 呢個概念先。所謂 water balance 咧，就喺呢度。呢個就係我哋身體攞到嘅水分 intake 同埋一啲嘅 metabolic production， 譬如話 respiration 咁樣，減咗我哋離開身體嘅水嚇。如果最後咧係等於零嘅話咧，咁呢個我哋身體咧就能夠 achieve 到一個所謂嘅 water balance 啦。咁呢度我有幾點嘅提示㗎。The water content of the body is affected by water gain and water loss。咁就住 water gain 咧有幾個例子啦，又可以 eating 啦、drinking 啦，或者係 respiration 嘅一啲嘅 byproduct 啦，咁樣都可以能夠有一個 water gain。咁至於 water loss 啦，就可以有一啲 sweating 啦、urination 啦、defecation 啦，仲有一個咧，我哋好容易都忽略咗嘅 exhalation， 都會令到我哋有 water loss 嘅。咁只要呢兩個 water gain 同埋 water loss 咧，所謂平衡，即係相對減咗之後咧係等於零嘅話咧，我哋就 achieve 到一個 water balance 啦。咁呢個 water balance 嘅重要性係乜嘢咧？咁我哋稍後就會講噶。好啦，咁我哋馬上就講呢個 importance of regulation of water content， 或者 important significance of 呢個 water balance。大家都記得，我哋老師咧都教過大家呢個答 significance 嘅題目咧，重要性 importance 嘅題目咧，你即係話如果冇咗嗰樣嘢嘅後果，咪就係個 importance 咯。咁我哋就即本就住如果個 water balance 係 upset 咗嘅後果，講一講，其實就係嗰個重要性啦。我哋睇到嘅第一點 ，if the water gain and water loss cannot be balanced， the water content of the blood will be affected。OK， 所謂 water content of the blood will be affected 咧，就即係話改變咗 change the， 我諗你都諗得到啦，係 water potential 啦。water potential of the tissue fluid by bathing the body cell。Gaining too much water will dilute the blood. That will increase the water potential of the tissue fluid. This will cause the body cell to absorb excess water. The body cells 因為佢吸得太多水啦，咪 swell 係嘛 ？swell 嘅話咧，都係會可能會 burst 啦。因為係一個唔健康嘅狀態啦，吸得太多水可能會死啦 ，may even die。Losing too much water will concentrate the blood， 咁會 decrease the water potential 嘅。This will cause the body cells to lose too much water and dehydrate. That will upset the normal functioning and may even die。咁你可以睇得到啦，太多又唔得，太少又唔得，所以咧維持個 water balance 嘅重要性咧，頭先就講咗啦。Therefore, it is important to maintain constant water content of the body in order to maintain 一個 constant water potential of the body fluid to keep the body cell alive。The regulation of water content of the body is known as osmoregulation。個定義咧 ，osmoregulation 呢個概念嘅定義咧，就係 the regulation of water content of the body。咁呢度有個圖示咧，就係頭先我所提到嘅gaining too much water 又點樣咧 ？losing too much water 又點樣咧？咁red blood cell burst，red blood cell shrink，咁樣咧就 自己睇啦。跟住落嚟咧，我哋會介紹呢個泌尿系統啦 ，urinary system。首先 ，both the regulation of water content， or 或者我哋叫做有個新嘅字啦，而家係咪 ？regulation of water content 就叫做乜嘢啊 ？Osmoregulation and excretion are carried out by the urinary system 嘅。The urinary system consists of two kidney 呢啲嘅部分啦 ，two kidney, two ureters, a urinary bladder and a urethra。呢度就係嗰個 kidney 啦，兩邊嘅，呢度就係個 ureter 啦，呢條啦。跟住呢個就係個 bladder 啦，呢個就係個 urethra 尿道。好，咁呢度都係個資料嘅來源啦，都嚟自一啲權威嘅書籍㗎。Kidneys are 呢度有啲描述啦嚇，從個 shape 開始描述嚇。Kidneys are dark red, bean-shaped organs. They are present below the rib cage with one on each side of the vertebral column。所謂 vertebral column 咧就係脊骨啦 ，backbone。Each kidney receives blood from the renal artery。俾 kidney 嗰條血管咧有名㗎嚇，叫做 renal artery。And drains blood away by the renal vein。They produce 佢嘅 product 咧就係 urine 啦。Ureters 咯咁啊 ，they are narrow tubes。Each ureter passes urine from kidneys to the urinary bladder. Urinary bladder. It is a muscular elastic bag. For temporary storage of urine, about 300 milliliter. Its exit to the urethra is guarded by two rings of sphincter muscle. Urethra. It is a narrow tube。同 urethra 一樣嚇，佢都係一啲好窄嘅管嚟嘅，就係 discharge 呢個 urine 嘅。The discharge of urine 呢個 charge 寫錯字啦，我寫翻好佢 discharge。The discharge of urine from the urinary bladder through the urethra to the outside is called urination。呢個咁嘅過程有個名俾佢嘅。Urination. Note, when the urinary bladder is full, the wall is stretched that trigger the stretch receptor。咁嗰啲 sensory neuron 有個 receptor 嗰位叫做 stretch receptor 咧，喺嗰個 urinary bladder 嘅 wall 嗰度存在。脹起身嚟嘅就會拉扯個窩，跟住咧就會刺激到嗰啲 stretch receptor， 跟住咧就會 initiate 一個 spinal reflex 嘅。咁大家記得啦 ，reflex action 咧係分為 spinal reflex 同埋 cranial reflex。咁由 spinal cord 負責嘅咧，嗰個就係 spinal reflex 嘅。The spinal reflex cause the muscle of the bladder wall to contract. And the internal sphincter muscle to relax. It is a reflex action， 屬於呢個 involuntary action 嘅。Under voluntary control， 嗱，我哋可以用意志咧去控制。The external sphincter relax to enable urination to take place。咁呢度就係嗰個 external sphincter、internal sphincter 個 urethra 就俾呢兩個 circular muscle 咧就控制住啦。Bladder、kidney。 kidney 裏邊嘅結構，我哋一陣間先講啦。Ureter 就嗰啲 muscle 啦 ，bladder wall 嗰啲 muscle 啦。urethra， 跟住就呢度就係嗰個 sphincter muscle。介紹完呢個 urinary system 嘅一個 general plan 關於 kidney ureter、urinary bladder 之後咧，我哋仔細啲介紹一個 kidney。Gross structure of the kidney. Each kidney has 3 parts. Cortex is the outer region. Medulla is the inner region. 跟住咧 pelvis is the central cavity， 中空㗎嚇。which drain， 記得 cavity， 所以係即係一個空位。central cavity which drains urine into the ureter。喺 kidney 裏邊嘅 blood vessel， 我哋稱呼做 renal artery。佢嘅功能係 carry oxygenated blood rich in metabolic waste。Renal vein carries the oxygenated blood with less metabolic waste away from the kidney。好啦，咁呢度就睇到圖示啦，呢度有啲 kidney 嘅內部結構啦 ，renal artery、renal ring、ureter、cortex、medulla、pelvis 啦。不過呢度咧就介紹下一啲腎臟嘅病嚇。有陣時咧，你個腎臟咧，因為基因問題咧，就搞到一啲人呢個腎臟咧係有問題，係需要 transplant 㗎。所謂 transplant 即係要移植啦，係一個新嘅腎俾佢。如果唔係咧，佢啲基因咧會搞到佢個腎咧好多泡泡，嗰啲泡泡咧就壓住晒嗰啲tubules 啦，就搞到成個腎咧都係有問題。咁樣呢個就叫做 polycystic kidney disease。cyst 就係嗰啲泡泡啦。polycyst 咧就好多個泡泡喺個腎嗰度。咁你求其打個名polycystic kidney disease 上網咧，你就可以睇到一啲哇係好核突嘅真實嘅病人去換腎嘅時候，佢嗰成個腎咧變晒泡泡，好多個泡泡出嚟。咁你哋呢啲自己去睇啦好嘛？當係一啲嘅額外嘅知識係咪？走入去呢個腎裏邊嘅最基本單位，我哋叫做 nephron。Each kidney contains about 1 million nephron, which are the functional unit of the kidney, a basic functional unit of kidney. Each nephron consists of 2 parts， 一個叫做 Bowman capsule 啦，另一個咧就係 the urine producing tubules 嘅。咁呢度就係一個圖示啦，一個腎裏邊嘅最基本嘅單元啦 ，nephron。一個 nephron 就放大之後咁嘅款啦，血入嚟啦，跟住離開喺呢度咧就有個好高壓嘅情況咧，就擠咗啲液體出嚟，喺度咧呢度咁樣穿過去，成個過程咧就製造咗啲 urine 出嚟，但係有部分液體咧，有好多液體咧都係吸收翻去血嘅，陣間會詳細講啊。呢個係一個 nephron 放大咗之後嘅內部結構。Bowman's capsule 我哋走入去詳細講嚇，佢有一個叫做 嗰啲 tubule 呢度講嗰啲 tubule 咧，有啲叫做 proximal convoluted tubules， 有啲咧就係稍後咧loop of Henle 同埋呢個 distal convoluted tubules 一陣間先講。但係 Bowman capsule 就係指呢一個位。It is present in the cortex of the kidney。所謂 cortex 咧就係最面頭呢針啦， 喺呢度呢個位置 cortex of the kidney. It is a cup-shaped structure looking like a ball. 叫做 cup-shaped structure looking like a ball that has been pressed in one side 嚇，即係撳扁個波咁嘅時候就好似一個 C cup shape 嘅即係咁樣你要有呢個理解係嘛？This capsule is composed of two thin walls, which enclose the capsular space between them. Outer wall is composed of one layer of epithelium that confines fluid inside the capsular space. Inner wall is composed of a single layer of cells that is in contact with the glomerulus 或者係嗰個 capillary 嘅。好啦，介紹完呢個 Bowman capsule 之後咧，就要介紹下嗰啲 urine producing tubules。The Bowman's capsule leads to the urine producing tubule, which consists of four parts. Part 1, it makes several coils to form the proximal convoluted tubules， 又或者叫做 first coiled tubules in the cortex. It is the longest of the kidney tubule. Longest part 大概有14個 mm 咁長。Part 2 then dips into the medulla and returns to the cortex to form the U-shaped tubule called loop of Henle 嘅。咁呢度有筆記啦，Friedrich Henle 咧係喺1809至到1885年啦，即係呢個時期佢出世同埋死啦，係佢呢個人咧，呢個科學家咧就係發現咗呢個 loop of Henle 嘅。In the cortex, it coils again to form the distal convoluted tubule， 又或者叫做 second coiled tubules 嘅。Part 4 finally it joins， 即係嗰個 distal convoluted tubules 咧就 joins with other tubules。咁12個 nephron 嘅 distal convoluted tubules 啦，成為匯聚埋一齊，成為一個 collecting duct。which passes through the medulla to drain urine into the pelvis。咁跟住再講講嗰啲 blood supply 咧，好重要啊，因為佢啲液體會壓出嚟啦，跟住又要吸翻入去血裏邊嘅。Blood supply to the nephron. Each nephron is supplied with blood by two capillary networks. An afferent arteriole branched from the renal artery leads to a spherical capillary network called glomerulus. The glomerulus is enclosed by the cup-shaped Bowman's capsule。即係嗰個 inner wall 頭先講話係 in contact with 呢個 capillary 咧，就係 in contact with 呢個 glomerulus 嘅 capillary。The capillary of the glomerulus rejoin to form an efferent arteriole after leaving the Bowman's capsule. This efferent arteriole drains blood into the second capillary network, which surrounds the coiled tubules， 包括有 proximal 啦、loop of Henle 啦同埋 distal convoluted tubules。Mainly in the cortex， 主要喺個 cortex 個 kidney 嘅最外嗰層嗰個位。Finally, these capillary rejoin to form a venule, which leads to the renal vein。咁喺呢度咧就一個成個嘅圖示咧，講緊嗰啲blood supply to the nephron 啦，呢個 Bowman capsule 啦，嗰啲 urine producing tubules 啦，同埋呢個成個 nephron 嘅圖啦，咁樣再深入啲嘅仔細啲嘅圖。咁就頭先就介紹咗啦，呢度就唔詳細再講呢幅圖啦，咁啊自己睇嚇。 跟住落嚟咧就要講一講呢一個 nephron 嘅功能 function。The function of the nephron is to produce urine， 就係要 produce urine 嘅。咁呢個 produce urine 嘅過程咧係有兩個主要步驟，分別係 ultrafiltration 同埋呢個 reabsorption。These processes enable the kidneys to remove， 即係呢個 ultrafiltration 同埋 reabsorption 咧，就令到喺呢個 kidney 咧有本事咧 remove the waste product。即係唔單止 remove the waste product 啊，仲係冇失去 without losing the useful substance in blood 啊，譬如話 glucose 啊嗰啲咁樣。Ultrafiltration 我哋介紹。Ultrafiltration is the filtration under pressure， 一定有高壓嘅。That occurs at the junction between the glomerulus and Bowman's capsule. High blood pressure 點樣導致呢個 high blood pressure 嘅咧？係咁嘅。The efferent arteriole leaving the glomerulus is narrower than the afferent arteriole 嘅。咁樣就造成一個高壓嘅喎。Entering it that builds up a high blood pressure inside the glomerulus. This pressure forces plasma through the wall of the glomerular capillary and the inner wall of the Bowman's capsule into the capsular space. This process is called ultrafiltration 嘅。咁我哋再深入啲咁睇睇嗰個 ultrafiltration 嘅過程啦。Filter. The capillary wall of the glomerulus and the inner wall of the Bowman's capsule are very thin, 1 cell thick, and are differentially permeable. They act like filters that only permit small particles, molecules, like glucose, amino acid, salt, urea, and water to pass through. The fluid formed in the capsular space is called glomerular filtrate, which has composition similar to that of plasma except that it has no protein. 即係嗰啲 blood protein 啊，溶解咗喺血裏邊嗰啲 blood protein 咧太大粒啊，就過唔到去。咁我喺下面再重申啦 ，red blood cell, blood platelets, and plasma proteins are too big to pass through the filters and are retained in the blood。咁呢度有個圖示啦 ，afferent arteriole 啦，一個 wide 嘅narrow 嘅 narrower 嘅 efferent arteriole 啦，造成一個 high blood pressure。咁啊，詳細就呢度圖就自己理解一下嚇。頭先我喺文字上面講解。Reabsorption 啦，講完 ultrafiltration 咧，就 reabsorption。Reabsorption after ultrafiltration, the glomerular filtrate flows into the urine-producing tubules. To avoid the loss of so many useful substances in the glomerular filtrate, most of them will be absorbed from the kidney tubule back to the blood capillaries surrounding them. This process is called reabsorption. The coiling of the tubules increases the surface area and the time of flow. Surface area and the time of flow for reabsorption of more substances. Glucose, amino acid, and salts. 100% of glucose and amino acid and 80% salts are reabsorbed in the proximal convoluted tubules by diffusion and active transport 嘅。如果唔係用 active transport 係冇可能100%咧 diffuse 晒過去嘅，就咁靠呢個 diffusion。Water 第一點blood passing out of the efferent arteriole has a lower water potential 咁理解。Because of the increased concentration of plasma protein， plasma protein 係溶得係水㗎嘛，血裏邊就少咗啲水啦， plasma protein 又冇出去嘅話咧，佢溶得係水之影響嘅 water potential 咧，就會降低個 water potential。咁有另一個因素咧，會降低個 water potential 嘅，就係嗰個 blood pressure，a reduced blood pressure 咧，都係會降低個 water potential 嘅。As a large amount of solid amino acid, glucose, etc. are reabsorbed into the blood, the glomerular filtrate becomes more dilute and has a higher water potential. Therefore, water is reabsorbed from the glomerular filtrate 裏邊就有一個 higher water potential 啦 into the surrounding blood capillary with lower water potential by osmosis 嘅。Over 80% of the water is reabsorbed in the proximal convoluted tubules， 即係 first coiled tubules back to blood. Most of the remaining water will be reabsorbed from the loop of Henle, the distal convoluted tubule, and the collecting duct back to blood. There is a control mechanism to regulate the amount of water absorbed at the collecting duct. 留意啦，水咧係會喺呢度咧1、2、3點咧都會 reabsorb 嘅。咁但係咧控制即係身體有得控制水 reabsorb 嘅多少咧，就淨係喺個 collecting duct 嗰個位。咁稍後咧就會講一講呢個控制呢個 negative feedback mechanism 嘅。但係我哋而家都要講一講一個 molecule 叫做 urea。After the absorption of large amount of water in the proximal convoluted tubules, the concentration of urea in the glomerular filtrate 當然會 increase 啦。This enable urea 呢個啲 metabolic waste to diffuse from the glomerular filtrate down the concentration gradient to the surrounding blood capillary. About 50% of the urea is reabsorbed by diffusion to blood. 即係唔係所有濾咗出嚟嘅 urea 都係屙晒出嚟嘅，有一部分咧係透過 diffusion 咧入翻去 urea 嗰度，但係有一部分都會屙走佢，咁所以咧都會排到嗰啲 urea 走嘅。Substance 係一個 general table 一個 summary table 啦，講晒嗰啲 glucose 啊、amino acid 啊、salt water 同埋呢個 urea。究竟佢哋係 reabsorb 翻幾多咧？咁樣喺邊度 reabsorb 咧？咁樣我呢度咧就同埋嗰個 process 係點樣咧？咁樣我呢度就唔詳細講啦。tick 就代表就proximal convoluted tubules 咧係基本上全部咧都會喺 proximal 嗰度 reabsorb 嘅喎，係咪？咁跟住 loop of Henle 咧就 reabsorb 嗰啲 salts 嘅喎。咁跟住咧water 咧亦睇 loop of Henle 都會 reabsorb，urea 都會 reabsorb，distal 都係。因為 glucose 同埋 amino acid 咧已經係完全 reabsorb 晒啦，咁所以咧喺 distal convoluted tubules 咧就唔會再呢個 reabsorb 噶啦。collecting duct 就 reabsorb 呢啲。咁呢個 nephron 嘅 kidney tubule 又有啲咩嘅特別嘅 adaptive feature 咧？去到adapted to 呢個 reabsorption 咧，咁而家講。Adaptive features of cells forming the wall of the kidney tubules for reabsorption, mitochondria. The energy required for the active transport of glucose, amino acid, and salts in reabsorption is provided by the numerous mitochondria present in the cell of the proximal convoluted tubules 嘅。即係話喺個 proximal 嗰個位咧，即係呢啲位咧 ，proximal 啊嘛，就已經係有大量嘅 mitochondria 喺嗰度嘅 cell 裏邊 咁啊，因為要進行 active transport 啊嘛嚇。咁啊，成幅圖咧就 summarize 晒呢個 ultrafiltration 啦，同埋 reabsorption。呢度亦都提到啦，有幾多係 percent 嘅唔同嘅 molecule 咧係會 reabsorb 啦。咁 reabsorb 嘅途徑係 active transport 同埋 diffusion 啦、osmosis 啦，抑或係就咁 diffusion。咁喺呢個 collecting duct 呢個位咧，我哋稍後就會講係嗰個 reabsorption of water 咧可以受控制，係令到你咧屙啲尿咧係稀啲，又或係濃啲啊咁樣。點樣控制個機制係非常之重要嘅，咁一陣間會詳細講。咁跟住咧就先介紹呢個 urine formation 先。reabsorption 講完啦，係咪啊？咁咪再講有啲尿要屙出嚟㗎，係咪？咁啊 urine formation 係點樣形成嘅咧？咁 urine 點形成嘅咧？首先 A，the loop of Henle is specially adapted to maintaining an increasing concentration of salt towards the bottom of the medulla。即係呢個 loop of Henle 一路落去嘅時候咧，嗰個 water potential 咧係會不斷咁樣降低，即係話一個 increasing concentration of salt， 鹽嘅濃度會越嚟越高，鹽嘅濃度越嚟越高，即係 water potential 越嚟越低啦。好啦 ，this gradient facilitate the reabsorption of water 㗎嚇，即係外圍啊係會不斷咁樣令到咧，即係啲水咧係咁樣離開嘅，因為越嚟越濃度高啊嘛，即係 water potential 越嚟越低嘅時候咧，喺呢一個位咧，啲水就會離開個 loop of Henle。上翻嚟都一樣，即係話呢個位咧係會不斷咁樣吸收 reabsorb 翻啲水分。應該可能我都會詳細講到咧，即係有啲駱駝啊嗰啲咧 loop of Henle特別長㗎，特別長。咁入到去嗰個medulla嗰個位嘅內部咧，就哇啲鹽嘅濃度，即係個 water potential 好低，咁越嚟越多啲水咧就 reabsorb 嚇，所以咧嗰啲動物咧就屙好少嘅尿㗎，因為大部分嘅水咧都會喺個 loop of Henle咧就 reabsorb。咁呢度就唔詳細講啦。咁啊 ，the longer 係啦 ，repeat 翻我頭先講嘅嘢啦。The longer the loop of Henle, the more water can be reabsorbed. Animals like 呢個 camel have long loop of Henle. C. The fluid draining from the collecting duct to the pelvis is called urine。最後咧排到離開到個 loop of Henle 啦，離開到嗰啲 so-called tubules 入到 collecting duct 咧，嗰啲咧就叫做 urine 啦，可以屙出嚟㗎。但喺個 collecting duct 嗰個位咧都會 reabsorb 嘅，我一陣間詳詳嗰個位咧就可以 control 再 control。但係 loop of Henle咧，即係純粹係一路落去咧個 water potential， 即係外圍嘅 water potential 係越嚟越低嘅話咧，都唔算係身體可以 regulate 到嗰個water 嘅 reabsorption， 純粹係都係不斷咁樣吸收嘅啫。去到 collecting duct 一間講先至係會控制得到幾多水regulate 啊。應該先講啦，咁而家講埋呢度先。urine contains 96% of water, 2% of urea， 間低佢。Compared with 0.03， 你記唔記得係濃咗好多嘅0.03% in glomerular filtrate, 1.5% salt and other metabolic wastes. The higher urea concentration in urine is mainly due to the reabsorption of a large amount of water back to blood。點解會濃咗啊？嗰啲salt 喺 urine 裏邊，或者係嗰啲 waste 啊，就係因為咧有個 reabsorption of water back to blood much faster。嗱，答聲喺呢度啊 ，much faster 快過嗰啲 reabsorption of urea 嘅。E. Difference in the volume of glomerular filtrate and urine form。 呢度去比較一下。Rate of formation of glomerular filtrate 咧就係每分鐘咧就 filter 到125個 ml， 咁一個鐘你可以諗下話幾多啦，係咪？Rate of filtrate reabsorb 124，咁即係話 formation of urine 嘅 rate 咧係每分鐘咧就有1個 ml 嘅 urine 產生，你計咯，60秒就1個 ml， 係咪？你個 urinary bladder 係300 ml，一般嚟講幾耐要去一次廁所啊？係咪啊？你咪照計咯，300分鐘，300分鐘係幾多小時啊？5個鐘度要去一次廁所啦，就滿啦你個 urinary bladder 係咪 ？OK，total amount of glomerular filtrate per day 就180個 litre 啊，filtrate 180個 litre 啫喎。但係咧大量都係會 reabsorb 嘅，可以形成嘅 urine 咧都係1.44個 litre 嘅啫，大概一支汽水，另外再加大半支汽水咁多。Comparison of the concentration of substance in plasma, glomerular filtrate 同埋 urine 嘅 protein 就係比較呢度700，因為過唔到去啦。amino acid 過到呢度 reabsorb 晒 ，glucose 都係 reabsorb 晒 ，salt 就唔係 reabsorb 晒 ，urea 就會濃度高嘅會 concentrate 上去，因為喺頭先講話osmosis reabsorb 嘅水分係速度係快過呢個 urea 嘅 reabsorption。ammonia 咧就都會濃度提升。咁就住上面嘅 data 咧，我哋有個文字聽嘅上面嘅 explanation， 你要睇睇啦嚇，留心。There is no protein in the glomerular filtrate because protein molecules are too big to pass through the capillary wall in the glomerulus. The concentration of glucose and amino acid in plasma and glomerular filtrate is the same because these molecules are small enough to pass from the blood through the wall of the capillary and the Bowman's capsule into the capsular cavity。即係 capillary 就係嗰個 glomerulus 嗰啲 capillary 啦，去到個 Bowman capsule 咧裏邊咧就係嗰個 capsular cavity 裏邊。There is no glucose and amino acid in urine because they are already completely reabsorbed by diffusion and active transport in the proximal convoluted tubules in the surrounding blood capillary。呢個字咧 completely absorb 咧，其實咧我哋就係 reabsorption 一部分。咁我哋其實你係 completely reabsorb 會仲好啲嘅，因為呢個係專有名詞。Thus energy， 因為 completely reabsorb 咧唔可以靠 diffusion alone， 所以 energy is used in reabsorption。The higher urea concentration in urine is mainly due to the reabsorption of large amount of water back to blood， 而且係 much faster than the reabsorption of urea 嘅。頭先都講過啦。好啦，就住頭先講嗰啲咧，全部都係講緊 excretion function of kidney。但係 function of kidney 咧就唔單止 excretion 嘅，我哋先睇睇 excretion 嘅定義先啦。The accumulation of metabolic waste is harmful to the body。The kidney produce urine continuously to remove this waste， 即係 urea。Osmoregulation 係 kidney 嘅另一個功能但係呢個 osmoregulation 咧就係喺 collecting duct 進行嘅。咁呢度咧就馬上會講噶啦。不過我做少少介紹先。Osmoregulation, the kidney maintains constant water content of the body fluid by maintaining constant water potential through regulating the amount of water and salt in blood。點樣 regulate 咧？咁樣而家馬上話俾你聽。When a person loses too much water， 我不斷咁樣流汗啊、跑步啊，即係運動啊 ，lose too much water 啦，有個 mechanism 咧係會令到咧啲血嗰個 water potential 提升翻，即係話啲尿咧就唔好俾佢屙咁多。但係呢個 mechanism 係點樣進行嘅咧？咁啊，究竟嗰個邊度係負責感受嗰個 water potential 嘅帶升同埋降咧？咁樣依家馬上話俾你聽。Mechanism too much water potential 呢度講啦。After heavy sweating, blood becomes concentrated and its water potential decrease to a value lower than normal。呢個好重要，低過嗰個指標，即係好似冷氣個行均值咁樣，低過你 set 係25度，低過25度咧就會熄冷氣，高過25度咧又會開翻個冷氣。咁確保咧個温度係25度。我哋都要確保個 water potential 係恆常喺某一個 normal 嘅 water potential。This is detected by the 原來有啲 receptor 係 detect 嘅喎。呢啲 receptor 係有別於我哋認識嘅嗰啲 pressure receptor stretch receptor， 叫做 osmoreceptor， 可以 detect 到 water potential 咁巴閉嘅喎。osmoreceptor 喺邊度㗎？原來係喺個 hypothalamus 㗎，of the brain。腦下垂體嗰個位啊 ，that stimulate the pituitary。原來咧呢啲咁嘅 osmoreceptor 咧喺 hypothalamus 咧就 detect 到呢個唔正常嘅即係低咗嘅 water potential 啦，就 stimulate 個 pituitary gland 呢個 pituitary gland 好巴閉又有好多種荷蒙咧可以嗰度 secrete 出嚟嘅。咁而家呢種荷蒙咧就係 secrete more ADH。anti-diuretic hormone 即係呢個 hormone 咧有個最後嘅效果咧係就係即係減少你啲尿嘅anti-diuretic hormone。anti 就係唔俾啦 ，diuretic 可以話係一個呢個利尿咁嘅意思，利尿即係容易屙啦，即係但抗利尿即係唔俾佢咁順利咁樣屙尿啦嘅激素。究竟呢個咁嘅激素做啲咩嘅咧？原來佢入血咧就去到 collecting duct 先至話事嘅 ，collecting duct 先至會刺激到 collecting duct 先至會有個 receptor 咧去到俾呢隻 ADH 去刺激佢嘅。The wall of the collecting duct becomes more permeable。刺激咗個 collecting duct 之後咧就會 collecting duct 咧就 become more permeable to water。咁因此咧就多啲水咧。因為外面咧，即係 collecting duct 外邊咧係個 water potential 好低㗎嘛，咁所以咧又 become more permeable 嘅時候咧 ，a greater proportion of water 呢個字要寫嘅 proportion 嘅比例上面多啲啫，就唔係全部嚇。A greater proportion of water is reabsorbed by osmosis。呢度咧就 reabsorbed 啦。依啲咧將改翻做寫錯咗少少 ，reabsorb by osmosis from the urine in the collecting duct into the surrounding capillary 㗎。咁最後咧第4點 ，thus a small volume of concentrated urine is produced. This raises the water potential of blood back to normal。用翻個冷氣機嘅比喻啦，去翻25度嗰個set 咗嗰個温度一樣啦，去翻一個正常嘅 water potential。一個正常 water potential 係非常之重要啦，因為如果啲水分喺細胞裏邊無端端多啲又或少啲嘅話咧，咁 metabolic rate 就會受影響啦，咁樣咁一個人要正常咁運作咧，裏邊嘅細胞嘅 water potential 咧都係要維持恒常嘅。太低就有呢個 mechanism 咧 A 呢個 mechanism 咧。去到調翻高個 water potential。咁調翻轉啦，咁我呢度就長話短説啦。When a person drink a lot of water， 個 mechanism 咧就係after drinking a lot of water, blood becomes diluted and its water potential increase to a value higher than normal. This is detected by the osmoreceptor in the hypothalamus of the brain that inhibits the pituitary gland to secrete ADH。With less ADH, the wall of the collecting duct becomes less permeable to water. Less permeable to water. 因此咧 ，a smaller proportion of water is reabsorbed by osmosis from the urine in the collecting duct into the surrounding blood capillary。最後咧，第4點咧就係 thus a large volume of diluted urine is produced. This lowers the water potential of the blood back to normal。呢度咧就係一個圖示啦，頭先我介紹嗰個 negative feedback 嘅過程，飲得太多水，飲太少水，咁呢度咧就自己慢慢睇啦。希望呢個圖示咧更加容易咧，令到你理解我頭先文字講嗰啲嘢。跟住落嚟咧就講啲唔正常嘅情況啦 ，kidney failure 點樣 treat 嘅咧？咁樣我先介紹下先。Some diseases may result in kidney failure that the kidneys cannot remove metabolic waste properly. The accumulation of metabolic waste in blood 好危險嘅喎，urea accumulate 到咁上下咧會變 uric acid。uric acid 係一啲固體晶體嚟，咁有機會棘住喺嗰啲關節嗰度，成為即係有啲人係會咁嘅嚇，即係類風濕關節炎就咁樣形成嘅。咁但係咧我呢度即係話想話俾你聽，嗰啲 metabolic waste 咧係好毒嘅嚇。The accumulation of metabolic waste in blood may kill the patient. Kidney failure can be treated by a dialysis machine。有個 kidney machine， 我哋叫做 dialysis machine。呢個其中之一個方法。第二個方法咧就係 peritoneal dialysis。呢個就危險啲嘅，就用喺個腹腔嗰度。跟住第三個咧就一了百了嘅，就係個 kidney transplant。咁我先介紹呢個 dialysis machine 先啦。kidney machine 點樣 work 嘅咧？佢係點樣 work 嘅咧？首先要有啲 dialysis tubing。The dialysis machine consists of many differentially permeable dialysis tubing. This tubing provides a large surface large area for rapid diffusion of waste to take place within a short time。跟住咧要有啲 dialysis fluid， 呢啲咁嘅 dialysis fluid 咧係非常之貴嘅。點解咧？睇落去喎。The dialysis fluid。bath fluid，bath 啲咩咧？就 bath 嗰啲 blood 嘅 ，contains glucose, amino acid and mineral salt at the same concentration as the normal plasma. This prevents the loss of these useful substances from blood into the dialysis fluid by diffusion. 跟住咧，第二 ，the dialysis fluid is maintained at the same temperature as the body to prevent heat loss。唔單止要 prevent 呢啲 material 嘅 loss 啦，仲要 prevent heat loss 嘅。Hemodialysis 啦，就係成個嗰個 actual mechanism。Hemo 就係血啦。Blood is drawn from an artery 喺個 artery 嗰度攞啲血出嚟 ，into the dialysis tubing of the dialysis machine. As the blood passes through the dialysis tubing, metabolic waste like urea diffuse down the concentration gradient into the dialysis fluid, which will be discarded later。嗱，點解 urea 會 pass out 咧？因為咧嗰啲液體咧係咩都有嗰啲咁嘅glucose amino acid mineral salt 咩都係 same concentration as the blood。咁但係就係冇 urea， 咁 urea 咧咪可以 diffuse 嚟由血高濃度 diffuse 去呢個 dialysis fluid 嘅低濃度咯，咁樣。下面一句But large protein molecule and red blood cells remains in the blood。概念就係咁樣，去到 remove 嗰啲 waste 嘅，咁所以嗰包液體咧好鬼貴用完仲要抌添直接抌，因為啲 urea 係冇可能再攞翻出嚟，跟住循環再用嗰啲液體所以非常之貴嘅，洗一次腎。有啲咩唔好處咧？咁貴啦，頭先講咗係咪？第二點嗰度 expensive。睇第二點 expensive。The dialysis fluid, which has to be calibrated to have the same nutrient concentration, is very expensive。不單止，仲 long time is needed。咁樣洗一次腎咧都好貴，diffusion 嘅時間都需要時間噶嘛。Such treatment needs 4 to 6 hours to complete, but it has to be repeated 2 to 3 times a week because urea is produced continuously。呢個意思is produced continuously by the liver。知唔知嗰個過程係乜嘢？amino acid excess 嘅時候 cannot be stored， 就係會透過 deamination 分解產生 urea， 記唔記得？呢度係一個圖示，頭先我所講嘅概念。咁呢度咧就請大家慢慢自己去欣賞啦。第二種方法咧就係叫做 peritoneal dialysis。咁呢個 dialysis 係危險啲嘅，咁都係應間有個 disadvantage 啦。呢個介紹下先。By draining dialysis fluid into the abdominal cavity， 唔用個洗腎機喎，直接將嗰啲 dialysis fluid 咧注入去嗰個腹腔嗰度。點解咁樣會 work 咧？我哋睇睇先嚇。The peritoneal membrane of the abdominal cavity will act as a dialysis membrane。OK。因為劏都劏過老鼠啦，咁啊劏老鼠咧嘅時候咧，你要剖開個肚嘅時候咧，你要解開嗰個 peritoneal membrane 嘅。The peritoneal membrane of the abdominal cavity will act as the dialysis membrane. Metabolic waste will diffuse from the capillary of the peritoneal membrane into the dialysis fluid。跟住咧就扯翻走嗰啲fluid. By draining the dialysis fluid away from the abdominal cavity a few hours later, the metabolic waste are removed from the body. Advantage 有啲咩好處咧？喺屋企都可以做啦。Treatment can be carried out at home， 不過有危險㗎嚇。你喺屋企做咧，你嘅手可能唔乾淨啊，有機會吉穿嘅時候咧，你身體嘅時候咧係會有infection 啊。There is a risk of infection。咁最後嗰個一了百了嘅方法咧就係 kidney transplant 㗎。Advantage: no more lifelong treatment is required once the surgery is done 啦。呢個 advantage。Difficulties to be overcome， 佢哋會排斥啦。The blood group of the and the tissue of the donor and the recipient 個 patient 咧must be matched。Otherwise, rejection of tissues in the patient will damage the transplanted kidney. Matching of organ is more easily achieved between close relative。呢個提一提啦，即係近親咧有機會揾到吻合嘅 organ 容易啲揾啦，但係始終都係難揾嘅。好啦，咁同學咧就做呢個第一題同埋第三題嘅長題目啦，去到俾我去到作為呢個檢視翻你對呢個題目課題嘅認知啦。咁跟住我先至做咗評估啦，即係俾咗分數啦。咁跟住先至派翻個答案俾你哋温習，跟住稍後先至再測驗嘅。